Hello again, everyone. My name is Kevin Ayers, and these initial videos are based on some experiences I've had recently, focusing mostly on unemployment. First off, though, I will let you know that I've continued to receive even more questions and feedback since I posted the first two videos. The amount of questions and feedback is very encouraging, so please keep them coming. There have been additional volunteers to help guide me with future editing of the videos, and because of these videos, I even have a job lead, thanks to one of my dear friends from the past. Until then, I will continue to record these straight through with as few mistakes as possible. This week's quote comes from Art Gish's book titled Beyond the Rat Race, which is on my list of books to read. I haven't read it yet. Quote, even if you win the rat race, you are still a rat. End quote. So first, let's talk about gaps in employment. Being trained to conduct behavioral interviews, I was taught to look for these gaps and uncover the real story behind the dates of unemployment. I believe that the ability to explain these gaps both truthfully and winsomely can be the key to moving forward in any interview process, or it can also be the result of you hitting the brick wall and being kicked out of that process entirely. The explanation that you give reveals so much about how you have dealt with your unemployment so far, or your gap in employment for whatever reason, and how you've wrestled with this gap, what you have learned along the way, and how you can apply what you've learned to your future employment and life situations. I will have more to say about crafting a specific story later on in a separate segment when we talk about interviews more in detail. But for now, let's talk about the gap beginning day one. So you are now the proud owner of a baby gap in your employment. This baby, like a real baby, it'll wake you up at night, demanding to be changed, fed, rocked, changed again, fed again, and will otherwise wrestle you for your attention, unlike many other things that you've experienced before. This new obligation will be on top of everything else that may be happening in your life. So you can ask yourself, how did this baby gap happen in the first place? So, certain ways that you can become unemployed or without a job. Have you just graduated from high school, a VOTEC or a college, a university, or some other educational experience without a seamless transition into an immediate career? I know someone who had an injury, and that prevented them from going back to work for a specific amount of time, and others may prevent you from even going back into the workplace at all. Are you in between jobs for the moment because you quit or got fired or relocated somewhere else? Or are you part of the government shutdown that is currently going on, working without pay or not working until funding is appropriated? Are there other ways that one can be unemployed that I'm missing? If I've missed a way, if you have something different, reach out, let me know. Much later in the unemployment process, I'd like to discuss what to do when your gap doesn't want to move out. I'm assuming that you still desire to be a part of the workforce and not a part of the group that has stopped looking. If you have given up, don't take that as a dismissal. I will attempt to address that later on as well, and we'll be doing research along the way. It just so happens that the discussion of the group of the unemployed who are no longer looking will be nearer to the end of the unemployment cycle. If it happens to you like it happened to me the first time, I was unemployed. It took longer than 6 months to secure employment. I think back then the estimate was 1.6 million people were unemployed longer than 6 months. This is described as long-term unemployment when it goes beyond the 6 months. I encourage you to find something elsewhere in the popular culture from which you can draw an analogy, maybe a book, a movie, or a TV series, or whatever, to describe the deep emotion that you're feeling at the time when you first experience the unemployment. I say to choose a popular culture reference because your chances of it resonating with your listener is greater. Your reference may even have an element of humor in it in order to lighten a heavy topic. Your experience should draw from the analogy. I mean, the analogy should not define your experience, but describe a portion of your experience in order to let the other person into what you're going through. During my first unemployment, I used to refer to the movie Behind Enemy Lines with Owen Wilson. Even though it's a kind of an outdated movie, a lot of people had seen it. I recall the time when he had that look of incredulity on his face. When he reaches the rendezvous point, he's crouched, hiding, hearing the rendezvous point has been moved over the intercom as the enemy is closing in, as he flips the map over and over again, trying to get his bearings, realizing that this is going to be a long, hard road out of his personal hell. I encourage you not to get too attached to your analogy. If you find a better analogy or a more accurate story that describes your situation, use it, modify it, change it to fit your experience. Also, if your reference doesn't fit your audience, then your analogy will fall flat on the ground, and that's not what we're trying to do here. Depending on the circumstances of your unemployment, for which there are some disqualifications from getting compensated, I suggest you file for unemployment. You, through your hard work, have earned an opportunity to attempt to utilize this fallback. That's what it's made for you to fall back on while you get your feet back underneath you and become gainfully employed. Do the research on your state. You will get information in the mail that will go through it entirely in great detail, so I'm not going to cover that. Plus, I'm not sure what it's like in other states, whatever differences there are. Just keep in mind you shouldn't feel any shame initially, but more than likely somewhere along the long process you will here and there. That's natural. You'll feel shock at first or an adrenaline rush at first. That's natural too. You also will experience the hope of the future mixed with the dread that it just might not work out whenever you need it to. Guess what? That's natural too. Here you have a unique opportunity to immediately consider how your prior feelings about the unemployed either matches or doesn't match your current experience. Instead of the anonymous them being unemployed, it turns out that the personal I am unemployed now. Take note of how your perspective changes and ask yourself why. Why is there a difference in the way I felt yesterday versus today, now that I am unemployed? Don't leave this spot without answering these questions. Please, don't let this opportunity pass you by. It will come in handy later, trust me now. Plant your flag here for a moment before denial starts creeping in. I do believe that camping out here is best while you are initially going through the experience. There will be a period before you get information in the mail or you'll start hearing back from employers. Take notes, write it down, and ask yourself, yesterday, how did I view the group of unemployed before it became a reality for me? Later on, when you find your way again, when you move from your unemployment into employment, those who are unfortunate enough to be languishing in unemployment or have been dropped behind enemy lines, you will not see them as you once did when your career was going swimmingly. I say write it down because over time you will forget what original impact that the experience had on you. This is a type of low-level thinking about the particular details of your present experience. Your experience will adapt and change over time as you start to conduct higher-level thinking about big-picture concerns in the future. And if you neglect to write these things down now, your experience becomes one big monolithic thought. You may not be able to notice the nuances and variations as you progress and grow through your experience of unemployment and how it affects everyone around you. And if you neglect to capture the fine details, they may be gone. You may not be able to figure out exactly how you were feeling. You can also just think about conjecturing about what was it like. Trying to think back. In hindsight is 20/20 at times, but we don't remember everything. Also, don't hesitate to ask those around you how they are coping with the current situation. They can give you insights on your own blind spots. They can give you perspective on something that you may not have considered that is right there before your face. Later on, you should revisit your story periodically in order to hone and craft a more meaningful story as you discover more about your situation and how you have reacted to it along the way. This story should be seen as a springboard, and if it doesn't clearly describe where you want to go, this story should be looked at again. Reconsider telling your story again and again to yourself to make sure it matches that future spot that you want to be. However, stay true to what has happened and is happening. You are not looking for a useless fantasy or a noble lie. And check your story along the way to see how it needs to be modified in order to get you to where you want to go. So I appreciate you viewing today and spending this time with me. And once again, I do wish you a happy new year. We are currently experiencing a lot of snow, and holidays were so hectic that it was difficult for me to put a video in. I'm going to attempt to keep doing this weekly, and I hope you keep coming back. If you have any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, complaints, send me a comment, send me a text message, send me an email, click the thumbs up, ring the bell so you'll be notified of whenever I post new videos. And if you give me video or input on the video now as to what you would like to see or length or day you want it posted,